We're going to see how to create a web page just like this one using a very common web design pattern. And the best part is you don't even need any web design, HTML, or CSS experience. I'll walk you through the entire process step by step, showing you how to build in the HTML, then transition into the CSS, and create this specific design. This is a common pattern consisting of a header, a navigation, a main content area, a footer, and a sidebar. So let's get started. I have Notepad open, and in the background here I have Firefox open. I'm going to use Firefox to view the web pages, and that way we can see what our results are. So to get started, just open Notepad, and the way I'm going to set this up is half of the screen is going to be Notepad. And I'm just going to decrease this a little bit, and the other half I'm going to use Firefox. And this way I can see the rendered code or the rendered web page, and I can also view the related code. What I want to do first is go ahead and save my file as an HTML file. So I'm just going to call this index.html, and I'll just tell it to do all files so it doesn't try to append txt. Now this is not going to show anything, so I'm not going to open it in Firefox, but we're going to add a little bit of code, and then we're going to look at it in Firefox and see what that looks like. The first thing I want to do, and this is really HTML5 related, is add a doc type HTML. And this is all we need, and this is going to tell the web browser that it's an HTML5 document. Then I want to do HTML, and I'm going to close this tag. So what I've done here is I've opened this tag, HTML, and then I've added a closing tag with this backslash. So that's how you close an HTML tag. And in between, I'm going to add more tags. So what I want is a head tag, and I'm going to go ahead and close the head tag, following the same syntax with the backslash. And then I'm going to do a title, and I'll just say test page. So this is the title of my web page, and that's going to appear in the browser. And for right now, that's all I need there. And I'll make a little bit of room. Now below the head is where we're going to start the body. This is basically what is going to display in the browser. So I'll close this as well and start adding in some tags. So the first thing I'm going to do is add a header tag. This is an HTML5 tag. And then I'm going to do an H1. This is header 1 is what this tag stands for. And now I'm going to close this main header. So what I'm doing here is telling the web page that I'm about to add a header. And the header tags are meant for semantics. They're a meaning for web browser readers, SEO, to make use of. They're not really enhancing visual appearance or anything, but it's good to separate our content so that we give it this kind of meaning. Now, visually, these H1 tags are going to have an impact. So I'm going to say, welcome to the web page. This H1 tag is going to make our header stand out. I'll save this. I'll come over here to Firefox and go ahead and open it. And what I want to do is open File. I'll go ahead to Documents. I'll go to Website. And here's our index. And I'll open it. And there we are. So that is a very basic web page. We're going to go ahead and start extending this now. I want to add some navigation. So I'll do a nav. This is also HTML5. And in here, I want to do something like home. I'm going to put a pipe. And this is the straight up and down symbol that is usually above the return or enter key. And I believe on most keyboards, you'll have to click the shift key to get it. This is just going to kind of separate my navigation a little bit. I'll do blog and I'll do products. So just 3 things, and that's it. Now I'm going to go ahead and save so we can see our navigation, and I want to refresh Firefox. So I'll click this arrow right here, reload current page. There's our navigation. You can see we can't click on it. We're about to fix that though. So here I'm going to add an anchor tag, and this attribute here, I'm not going to add a link to a page, but I could do something. Well, we can go ahead and do this. We're just going to link to the home page, which is our index page, and I'm going to close the anchor tag. And so you can see I'm following the same syntax with the backslash on the anchor tag. So the way this works with the anchor tag to create this link, anything inside these brackets or these braces is not going to appear in the page, but it's going to tell the anchor tag where to go to. So this href, which is a hyperreference, is what it means, or hyperlink reference, says go to this index.html. So I can go ahead with the blog page, and I'm not going to actually add anything that's going to link anywhere. So I'm just going to put this pound, which is kind of a placeholder, you could say. And I'll go ahead with another anchor, and I'll do another pound. So here I could do a products.html instead of pound, but just for the demonstration, I don't have that page, and I'm just going to keep it simple. Now, if I refresh in Firefox, we can click these. They're not going to go anywhere, but we can definitely click them, and if they were wired up, it would take us somewhere. Now we're going to add a footer, and all of this content, again, is staying inside the body tag because it needs to be visible in the web page. So I'm going to do another HTML5 tag for semantic meaning. This tag is not going to display anything, but it's great for web browser readers, for SEO, and newer technologies that can actually make use of this semantic kind of meaning. Now we're going to add some things you might see common in footers. So I'm going to do like a terms of service. I'll do a pipe to separate that. I'll do a privacy policy and contact. So if they want to contact us, save. And if I refresh, so there's our footer. I'm going to dress that up a little bit here soon, and I'm just going to go ahead and add HTML. I'm going to add the reference tags here for links, and I'll just go ahead and copy and paste to create tags for all of these fairly quick. And we'll do contact is the last one. Save, and then if I refresh, we should see links on each of these, and there they are. So this is pretty basic at this time. There's a little bit of a structure starting to come through. Now what we're going to do is add some content to our page, and we're going to do it right between the navigation and the footer. So here I'm going to add a section tag. So this is another HTML5 tag. Just gives it some meaning that this is a new section in the page to divide it against any other content sections we might have, is basically what that means. And in the section, we're going to have an article. So this article you can think of as a self-contained piece of content. It might be a paragraph that just describes something. And if you could take that paragraph of content and move it to a completely other site, and it still makes sense because it's independent and it stands alone, it's an article. So I am going to add some lorem ipsum in here. So to get that, I'll just open up Internet Explorer, and this is going to go to Google, and I'll say lorem ipsum, and I'll just grab some of this right here. So this is basically just some placeholder text, and in here I'm going to paste it, and I'll save. Let's get the wrap going, word wrap, so we can see everything. And I'll carriage return here. Now we're going to refresh our browser. There's a lorem ipsum. We want a little bit of space though between this content and our navigation and our footer. For that, I am going to add a paragraph tag. This paragraph tag is not a semantic tag, so it's going to have an effect visually on what's happening. And if I save now, paragraph tag adds a little bit of space. You can see there what happens. And so I'm going to give this article a title, and then, or say I'm going to give it a title, then I'm going to add sort of a title for each paragraph. So under the article tag, I want to do another H1. So this is another header. I'm going to say this is the article title, and I'll close my H1. And then inside of here, I want to, this is fine, I would think. I'm going to do the header. So you notice I'm using header again, and this is perfectly fine because I want this to be the header for this paragraph. It could have been, I could have also put the title inside of a header, but I'm just going to do it for this, Introduction 1. And I want to bold it, but let's see what we have right now. Okay, now I want to bold this Introduction 1, and I don't want to put it in another H1, so I'm going to use strong. And I'll close this because our text is in there, and if I refresh, you can see what's happening now. Now we want to start modifying the presentation of this web page, the look and the layout of it. We need to move beyond HTML to do that. We need to move into cascading style sheets, or CSS, and that's going to allow us to really start making this page look a lot more like the finished product. We can take things and move them around and really get a refined layout to do that. What I'm going to do now is create another file. This is going to be a CSS file. So whereas right now we have an HTML file, I'm going to go ahead and create a CSS file. So I'm going to go ahead and open up another Notepad document, and I'm going to resize this a little bit. Let's see if I do this. And I can move this over so that way I can see things a little bit. This is not going to require a lot of width, so I can just go ahead and move it right here. It's also not going to require a lot of height to it because it's not going to take up much room. I'm going to go ahead and just call this, it needs to be called something.css, so I'll just call it style.css. And I'm going to do all files just so we don't have any issues with it trying to do something with txt. Okay. In here, what I want to do first is I'm going to do something with our page title. I actually want to center it. And before I make some changes to the CSS file, I need to wrap everything inside of a div. So let's see what this looks like and why we need to do that. Under the body, I'm going to do a div, and I'll close this div right above our body tag down here. Now this has no effect visually right now on our web page, and if I refresh this, you can see nothing's happening. But this is going to allow all the contents that we see on the page to be inside of this container, and then I can tell this container to have a certain width, and then I can tell it I don't want any margins, and that's going to make the page center up all the content. So let's see how this works. So on this div, I want to actually give it a name so I can reference it. I'm just going to call it container. I'll make it very simple. Then in our CSS, I'm going to reference container, and I'm going to do open bracket, and I'll explain that pound sign in just a little bit. I'll do width of 600 pixels, and I'll do a margin 0 and auto, and then we'll close this. So I'm opening with braces and closing with braces, and the content in between pertains to this container. The pound sign means that this is going to look for an ID with the name container. Container is going to have a width of 600 pixels. It's not going to have any margin basically is what that means, that 0. The auto says, since this is going to be 600 pixels, to go ahead and auto size the margins on the edges. So let's see exactly how this works. I'll save. Now I need to add a reference to this style sheet so we can link up our HTML file to the style sheet. To link the style sheet, we need to add another tag. I'm going to put it in the head under the title. This is going to be called a link tag. It's going to have a rel, which is relationship, and it's going to be called style sheet. The relationship is a style sheet. Here's href, which we're familiar with from our anchor tags, and it's just going to point to style.css, and I'll add my ending tag. Now if I refresh the page, you can see what happens. So what we've done now is we've constrained the width of our content because it's in this div tag. So before, everything was stretching pretty far across the entire browser. And if I resize the browser, you can see it stays in the middle. So that's very helpful. Now, we had a margin 0 and auto. So it basically means that we're not explicitly specifying a margin width, but because our browser right now might be, 1,000 pixels wide and our content is only 600, there's really 200 pixels of margin on each side that is not getting used, and we're just saying auto adjust that. So every time the browser gets wide, this is going to auto adjust the margin and keep us in the middle. All right, now we're going to go ahead and start styling some of these other items. So if I go back to our style sheet, and here I'm going to create a class called center text, and I'll open brace, close brace, and then all I need is text align center, and I'll have a semicolon here. If I go back to the header, I'll do class instead of ID equals center text. I'll save this, I'll refresh the web page, and you can see what happens with our welcome to the web page. Now we actually want to do that with the navigation and with the footer. Because this is a class, we can reuse it. We can use it in multiple places. So I'll paste that into the navigation, I'll paste that into the footer, and refresh the page. And there we have it. So that was pretty easy. Now we need to build our sidebar. And I am going to add a tag called aside. This is another HTML5 tag. I'm going to add it between or right under section and right above footer. This is aside, and I'll close aside. And in here, what I want to do is a header. So I'll say header, and then I'll close this tag and add some content. And so the first thing I want is buy my newest book. Buy my newest book. And then below the header, I'm going to have a paragraph of text. This is going to be, this is some extra content related to the first article. So obviously some filler content here. And then I want to do 3 links. So I'll have a link 1, I'll have a link 2, and I'll have a link 3. And I'll save this. Let's just see what this has done to the page now. So everything is just going vertical at this point because there's no styling applied to any of this. There's no CSS. And that's fine. This is kind of what we should expect. So we're going to add an ID of sidebar to this aside tag, and we'll go into our CSS file, and this is going to be an ID sidebar. So I need to update that to sidebar and open brace, close. What I want now is to float this right. That basically means our sidebar is going to move over to the right side. And then I'm going to do a width of 150. I do need to constrain the width of this so that it will float properly. I'll do a height of 250, which is also a key requirement here. And I'll do a margin of 15 so our content text is not running into it. I'll save that. And let's refresh our page and see what happens. I'm going to go ahead and save the index.html. Okay, so here's our sidebar, and you can see it's not quite what we want just yet, and that's okay. We're about to make a few more changes. Now we just need to make a few adjustments to get our sidebar moved up and pushing over our main content. So in this case, we want the main content and the sidebar to be inside of a div. So they're contained in that div, and they're kind of working with each other in that div and not interfering with our footer. So what I'm going to do is add a div, and this is enclosing the main content and also the sidebar. And I'm going to give this div a name. I'm using ID here and not class because there's only one div that's going to ever have this name. So I can call this main content. And I'll go ahead and give an ID here. This is going to be main content, open brace, close brace. And it will be the entire width, but I can give this a color so I can see what's happening. I'll just do a border of 1 pixel. It's going to be solid and it'll be black. This way I can see what we're doing. And then I'm going to give it a height of 300. That should be plenty for the main content and plenty for the sidebar. Okay, so there's our box. We want our sidebar up in this box completely. You can see here our footer is actually behaving okay. So to get our sidebar into this area, we need another styling that must apply to our main content. We have our sidebar floating right. We need our main content to float left. That's why the sidebar is not in the place it needs to be. So I am going to do another ID. This is just going to be called section main because it's going to apply to this section tag, section main. And in here, I'm going to give it a width of 400. And then I want to float left. And I'll save the index page and refresh. So there we go. Now we have our sidebar floating on the right. We have our main content on the left. This is really the look that we were after. But something weird is going on with the footer. And actually what is happening there is a carryover from the divs above it. Those divs are impacting our footer. So to make that not happen, we can do an inline style, which is what this style equal is. So instead of putting this in our style sheet, I'm just going to put it here because it's kind of a one-off case. So I'll say clear both. And that's all I need to do. I'll refresh this page. And now our footer looks good. And I can go back and just comment out this border. And to do that, I'll do a \* and then I'll do another * to close it, so that way it only affects the one line. Now the border should be gone whenever I refresh the web page, and indeed it is. So this is basically all the ingredients we need for a very common web page layout where we have our header, navigation, we've got the main content, we've got a footer, we also have a sidebar. Now in the sidebar, if you want to take these 3 links and actually hyperlink them, we saw how to do that. You can just copy some of this anchor text down here and do something like this. Then you can do a BR. which is a line break tag. And if I copy this line break tag and add it right there, that is going to create another line break so that all of our links are not on the same line. And I'm just going to copy this anchor text, go ahead and close the anchor text and refresh the web page. And that's pretty much now a finished product. I hope that was helpful and gave you a really great introduction to HTML and CSS, and also how to code up a very common web page pattern. Thank you. Web design doesn't have to be hard, and you don't have to spend hundreds and months on a college-based course. If you're ready to elevate your web design skills to a professional level, I have the perfect course for you. It's called Web Design for Rookies, HTML and CSS. This is an extremely thorough course that you can learn at your own pace in your own time. It's a project-based course as well, so that you'll have hands-on learning and finish the course with hands-on experience. By the time you complete this course, you'll have a solid foundation in HTML and CSS web design skills. To get started, just click here and I'll see you on the other side. Thank you.